Last but not the least, to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished lady from Pangasinan, Iloilo, and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Grace Poe. I move that she be recognized, Mr. President.
To our distinguished colleague from Pangasinan, Iloilo, and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Is this about EJ Obiana? Or is this about the SIM card bill?
Hindi.
Yeah. I think
Well,
there's a
Mr.
bit of
President,
confusion, Majority Leader.
Since
I
I'm
think-
already here,
Yes,
Mr.
yes.
President, I'm sorry, I thought this was about the SIM card registration. I'd just like to congratulate Mr. Obiana and thank him for the pride that he has given our country and our athletes. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, last but not the least, to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Isabela, Senator Raffy Tulfo. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
May recognize the distinguished gentleman from Isabela and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Raffy Tulfo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon to my distinguished colleagues. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor and privilege to join my colleagues in congratulating Mr. Ernest John E.J. Obiana, ang ating natatanging idol pole vaulter. Ending the season with a haul of 17 medals, 12 gold medals, including a win against Arman Duplantis, the current world record holder, plus 2 silver medals and 3 bronze medals is indeed an outstanding and incredible feat. EJ is a true exemplar of what makes a true Filipino athlete: disciplined, passionate, determined, and talented, at talaga namang world class. Alam niyo po, Mr. President, pag pinapanood ko yung sports na pole vault sa larangan ng athletics, parang ang simple-simple lang. Konting takbo, tapos tatalunin mo lang yung bar na mataas, gamit-gamit ang bitbit na pole. At sa loob ng ilang minuto, tapos na yung event. Pero, kapag pinanood ko ito ng maigi at pagmasdan yung mismong atleta, bakas sa bawat galaw ng isang pole vaulter ang lahat ng hirap na kanyang pinagdadaanan at determinasyong tumalon, at kulang na lang liparin yung bar para makatawid at lundagin ito na hindi bumabagsak. At ito'y nangyayari sa loob lamang ng ilang minuto. Make or break, ika nga. Sinasalamin din ito ang bawat isa sa atin na dumadaan sa kahirapan at kinakailangan tumawid at tumalon para sa mas magandang buhay. Our lives will always be filled with struggles, with us jumping from one challenge to another, trying to achieve happiness, success, and a better life. Unti-unting takbo, bubuelo ka lang ng konti para ipunin ang iyong lakas. Tapos, kailangan ng bilisang ang takbo at tumalon na mataas para malampasan ang pagsubok at maging matagumpay. Kaya naman, EJ, tunay kang simbolo ng pagsisikap at magsisilbing inspirasyon sa libo-libong Pilipino na gustong tumalon mula sa kahirapan patungong magandang buhay. Sa iyong pinakitang galing at pagpursigi, sigurado ako na you are profoundly one step closer to that Olympic gold. Kaming lahat ay nasa likod mo, sumusuporta sa iyo at sa bawat atletang Pilipino. Mabuhay ka, EJ. Saludo ako sa iyo. With this, Mr. President, I would like to be made co-sponsor of all the measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tulfo.
Thank
Majority
you,
Leader.
Mr. President. With the permission of the body, I move that all members of the Senate be made co-authors of this resolution. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate or propose amendments to the measure, I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 212, taking into consideration proposed Senate resolutions, Resolution number 63, 71, 87, 97, 164, 170, 177, 179, 220, 222, and 223, subject to style. I so move.
There being no objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader, the said resolution number 212, taking consideration all the other resolutions filed for E.J. Obiena, is hereby adopted by the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I move for a minute suspension so that we can ask and allow EJ to come to the rostrum and
May we
receive the
invite his
resolution.
family as
and
well?
his family, Mr. President,
And all the members.
and all the members of the Senate, please.
Session
Mr. President.
suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Just a minute, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 21st Session, Wednesday, September 14, 2022, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader? If not, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we resume consideration on Senate Bill number 1310 under Committee Report number 5. This is the Subscriber Identity Module SIM Registration Act.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of this measure is that we are in the period of individual amendments. I ask that we recognize the sponsor of the measure, the chairperson of the Committee on Public Service, Senator Grace Poe, to introduce amendments.
Our distinguished colleague, the chairperson of the Committee on Public Services, is recognized, Senator Grace Poe.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 2, line 12, section 3C, after the word telephony, insert the words and other electronic. I so move.
There are no objection, the motion is approved. Yes.
Can we just repeat? I was just walking. I just want to follow, so I can
Yes.
follow. Can we just
We
ask
withdraw
for-
the
Thank
approved
you.
motion.
I'll
Please
repeat,
continue. Yes.
Mr. President. On page 2, line 12, section 3C, after the word telephony, insert the words and other electronic.
Is that all right, our distinguished colleague from Taguig? There being no objection, the amendment's approved.
Mr. President, no objection. Just preference of the sponsor. Are we doing a page by page, or are we doing individuals amendment? I will follow whatever it is.
We're doing individual amendments, Mr. President.
But can we do
page
it
by
page by
page,
page?
yeah.
Thank you,
So
to
if
show
it's
some
page by
order.
page, can we intervene?
Yes,
Kayo rin?
Is there an ulterior amendment?
Okay.
is there anterior amendment?
I do. I have on page 1.
Oh,
Okay. If it's all right with the sponsor, we'll
Yes,
allow
yes, Mr. President. Let's hear them out.
the amendments.
move that we recognize Senator Pia Cayetano, Mr. President.
Our
to
distinguished
introduce
colleague from
amendment.
Taguig and Patero, Senator Pia Cayetano, is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President, on page 1, line 9, before subscriber, add the word once, so once with an apostrophe S, so that it reads, the state shall require the registration of one's subscriber identity module. Submit, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
Page 1, line
9.
9. I have a different...
Perhaps her Honor's
Yeah,
amendments are
okay.
already in her version. 'Cause
Towards
this
this and this. Okay. Put an S in...
No, we'll insert the word once. O-N-E apostrophe S. Or a person's, or one's, her Honor's choice.
Can it be read again? I'm sorry.
Sure. Mr. President, line 9. Insert the word once, O-N-E apostrophe S, between off and subscribers, such that the sentence will read, towards its end, the state shall require the registration of one's subscriber identity module. Or a person's. I am giving her Honor a choice.
Okay. I accept, Mr. President.
Thank you.
The amendment is accepted. Senator, our distinguished Minority Floor Leader, Senator Pimentel.
Sorry for the delayed reaction, but is that the only amendment to this paragraph in the declaration of policy? Because I have a...
Yes, that's the only one.
Yeah, okay. So, Mr. President, but after hearing my suggestion, if they could change their minds, if we can amend this third paragraph of section 2, declaration of policy, lines 9 to 12 of page 1, to read as follows. Towards this end, the state shall require the registration of subscriber identity module open and close parenthesis, capital letters SIM, for electronic devices by all users thereof to promote responsibility in the use of SIM, comma, and to aid law enforcement agencies in resolving crimes which involve its utilization. So, by introducing by all users thereof, I think that already captures one SIM card, and then we change the word accountability to responsibility, and in the last phrase we're making it aiding the law enforcement agencies in resolving crimes, Mr. President.
It's acceptable to me, Your Honor. I actually just saw something else because His Honor made his proposal on line 11. Insert the word the SIM. It's just grammar, Your Honor. We're putting an article before the words.
In the use of the SIM. In the use of the SIM? Is that it? Line 11.
Yes, I accept that, Mr. President.
So, thank you, Mr. President.
And for Senator Pimentel, I accept with that amendment, to the amendment, insert the word "and" before the word "users."
By all
Devices by all end users.
END.
Yes, by all end users. By all end users.
That's acceptable to us, Mr. President, because we will also propose an amendment to the definition of end user, Mr. President.
Noted, Mr. President.
Okay?
So we accept that.
The amendment is accepted by the sponsor. Any objection?
Secretariat able to follow? Yes. Okay.
Maybe you could read it one more time, Your Honors, just to be sure. Because it was
Okay.
So it will be towards this end.
Yeah.
The state shall require the registration of subscriber identity module for electronic devices by all, and then we'll add end users thereof to promote responsibility in the use of SIM and to aid law enforcement agencies to resolve crimes which involve its utilization.
period.
That already-
Wala na yung end platform to deter commission of wrongdoings. Wala na yan. So period from there.
Wala na po.
Involve its utilization. Period. So, the Secretariat copy. Okay? There being no objection, amendments approved.
No, Mr. President, nawala po yung amendment ko.
Yung da?
Towards the end, the state shall require, His Honor took out registration, so wala nang registration?
It's not it, It's not this one,
Sandali.
It's not this one.
May we ask the Secretariat to put the...
Towards this end, that is the paragraph that is currently being
That's not
discussed.
That's not.
That's not.
That's correct. That's the paragraph. So can we have a 1
1 minute
minute
suspension.
Hindi.
Mr. President, for clarity, let me just read the amendment that we accepted. I mean, now this line shall now read, towards this end, the state shall require the registration of the, add the word the, subscriber identity module SIM for electronic devices by all, and then add END users thereof, to promote responsibility in the use of, again add the SIM, and to aid law enforcement agencies to resolve crimes which involve its utilization. I so move.
Any objection to the motion? There being none, the amendment is approved.
On page 2,
Page 2, so we're done with page 1, gentlemen.
Yes,
ladies.
just clarification, have we amended the end user definition on page 2? Not yet.
not yet.
Not yet,
Mr.
so, okay.
Yeah, we're about to amend it now.
Can I propose,
Yes, go ahead, please.
yes, on page 2, lines 1 to 2, let's, if we can amend the definition of end user as follows. End user shall refer to any existing subscriber or any individual or juridical entity which purchases a SIM from the PTEs, comma, its agents, comma, authorized resellers, or any entity, period.
Mr. President, I would just like to clarify from the minority leader, is it in the line or juridical entity, is it who or which directly purchases? Is it who directly purchases or which directly purchases?
Mr. President, I changed the word who to which because it refers the ano bang tawag dyan? The last
Juridical entity.
the last entity that we are referring to is a juridical entity, and also I omitted the word directly, Mr. President.
Okay. So it's going to be which purchases?
Yes, which purchases?
Which purchases? Okay. I accept, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the amendment's accepted.
And have we done anything on the spoofing during the last session, Mr. President? Because if not yet, I will.
We'd like to ask the sponsor.
None yet, Mr.
Okay,
President.
so
He
if-
may propose.
So in that case, Mr. President, the proposal is on page 2. We delete section 3D, defining spoofing, and that would be from the deletion of lines 14 to 16, Mr. President. The reasoning here is that we are no longer going to make spoofing of a registered SIM later on, in the penalties, a crime under this measure, Mr. President, because it will be a crime in some other law, Mr. President.
Another law should be filed. Another measure should be filed for this particular.
Yeah, in my opinion, it can be punishable under existing laws already, Mr. President.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we, Mr. President, I'm not disagreeing, but can we get further information on that? Because it might be easy to amend, include it here if it's not included, but I take the word of the minority floor leader, but can we see it so we can study it? Because what we are mandating the registration, and yet if somebody will send a message and somehow altering that identity, we're saying it's covered by another law. I'd like to see that law, because otherwise we won't cover it, because based on the recommendation we won't cover it here.
Yeah, Mr. President,
Yes,
I would just like to
response.
explain. I would just like to explain why we included spoofing. As explained by the NTC, spoofing is done by using a device that alters the sender's number such that it would appear that a message came from another number or entity. It circumvents the very purpose of registration, which is to tie up a name to a number so that criminal activity can be traced.
Okay.
If we don't penalize spoofing, it would be a detriment to the integrity of the registration system itself.
Okay.
The problem, of course, we have existing laws about fraud, estafa, and swindling, etc. But it's not really spelled out when it comes to using these electronic devices in particular.
Mr. President, if I may, with the permission of the
Yes.
gentleman and the lady,
Senator
I
Cayetano.
understand the explanation given by Her Honor. It makes sense to me. And so my personal, because I have rendered an opinion somewhat, it makes sense to me that it would be penalized here and therefore to retain. But of course, we would like to hear from the minority floor leader also.
If I may also, Mr. President, just very short,
Yes.
if you recall last
Yes, Majority Leader.
session, Mr. President, this representation even introduced that smishing and vishing, Mr. President, and we are ready to withdraw that amendment of this representation because of this particular provision. So I would just like to put on record that I support the explanation given by the chairperson, Mr. President.
So the chairperson is appealing to the minority floor leader that
Yes,
we can retain.
Yes, to
spoofing.
retain it. Actually, we appreciate the studies made by our minority leader, but I would like to assure him that this is really needed so that the bill will have some teeth. Otherwise, they will again try to use the law by saying that you cannot really penalize that because it's already beyond the registration of the SIM. We really, the purpose is really to find out who that person is registering. That's why we have this there. So I appeal to the minority leader. Unfortunately, I cannot accept his amendment.
Question, my distinguished colleagues. Was this in the previous law that we passed, that was vetoed? That we included spoofing?
Mr. President, yes, it was included there. But that wasn't the reason why it was vetoed.
Yes, correct. Now my other question is it also in the approved House version that was approved last week on second reading?
It wasn't. But it's something that we can always introduce. And if it's not accepted by them, at least we did our part to strengthen the bill.
Okay.
Mr. President, nasa ano pa lang tayo, di ba? Nasa definition of terms. Kasi this is in anticipation of a motion to also delete the crime of spoofing registered SIM. Kasi yan ang title din dito, found on page 6, line 17. For spoofing registered SIM. So, ang ibig sabihin nito, there is already a properly registered SIM and then it's in the use of that SIM. Somehow, I cannot imagine the technology behind it, but somehow, the user of the SIM card can make it appear na iba ang identity niya. That's it. That is the crime. So, ang panukala batasan natin, it's all about making mandatory the registration of SIM card, and then kung may penalties tayo ron, it's related to, not following the mandate of the law to register the SIM card. Not in the use of the SIM card. Ngayon, ang aming opinion, this is tantamount to identity theft, which is already punishable under RA 10175 or the Cybercrime Prevention Act, specifically Section 4, Paragraph 3, computer-related identity theft. So yun po yun kasi ganun po sana yung parang outline ng ating batas. We mandate the registration of SIM cards PTEs. Do not activate the SIM card unless it is registered. Applicant, you also provide the PTEs with accurate information about yourself when you're applying for that SIM card. And dun po tayo iikot sa mga violation po na yun. Yun ang gagawin nating crime under this law. But crimes as to the use of the SIM na, which is released, activated by the PTE because it's already registered, ibang batas na po yun. And sa palagay namin, kaya na sa computer-related identity theft, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, I think the intent of that law, of this law, is actually to strengthen that cybercrime law as well, to make it specific to SIM. I know that we have other laws, but then isn't it part also of what we do to streamline certain things that you can find it already included in the law that we are drafting, which is an improvement of the other laws in the past, so that it's an easy reference. I still think that it will not really detract from the intention, and I don't think there's anything violative of this because it's still about the SIM and how it's being used, or if you have registered the fraudulent account, it's still about identity.
I have what I hope is a compromise, Mr. President, if I may. What I have done in previous bills is make reference to other laws that are relevant. So with the permission of the chairperson, would it be acceptable to say that something to the effect, subject to style, that spoofing is a crime as punished by the cybercrime? Because I believe the concern of the chairperson is if we don't define it here as a crime, they will use it as a defense and say, ay, hindi kami applicable dyan, di yan kasama. So if so her honor wants to define it here. The gentleman from Cagayan de Oro, on the other hand, the minority floor leader says it's already covered. So my proposal is you mentioned that other law in this bill.
Kaya nga, Mr. President, ang sabi ko nga sa staff ko, ang last na i-amend namin would be the title. Kasi depende ngayon sa pag-uusapan natin kung anong context ng body. Ngayon, if we start enumerating or mentioning crimes which can be committed with a SIM card, is that only spoofing?
No.
There may be others. Ngayon, ngayon we now open another door, which will now lead us to enumerating so many other crimes
Spoofing,
related to SIM card, and then okay na yun. Then we, at the end of the day, if that is the decision, then we will let the title of the measure reflect the body, the contents of the body. Kasi ako, ang akin kasi concentrate na ako dun sa SIM card registration. That would be the title. But if you want to also punish the use of SIM and eSIM, hindi na nga cards ngayon, ano? These are the modules themselves, no? And if we want to enumerate new crimes, or then we can pursue this. But do we end at spoofing?
Then we can postpone this discussion till we finish, so we can see if what direction it goes, Your Honors.
Mr. President, this is what the good minority leader has agreed for using Section C of page 6 for using fictitious identities to register a SIM. That's already in the cybercrime, anti-cybercrime law. So, by allowing that, we are just actually strengthening or reiterating that is a crime. Now, what is the reason why we can't allow also for spoofing registered SIM? When you cause harm or you wrongfully obtain anything of value, because this is my point, Mr. President. Before you can get information on the owner of a SIM, because that's registered under the PTEs, diba? Name, date of birth, address, etc. A concerned, what do you call this? A government body that can issue a subpoena has to be able to determine why you need that information of the subscriber. So if we can't say that, oh, because it's spoofing, he did this or he registered different identity, you have to give a reason that is under this law. Hindi naman pwedeng, no, we just want, because it's under the law, we can check the identity of the person. What's the reason behind it? That's why we're putting possible crimes that are related to the inaccurate registration of the SIM.
Yes. So, what is the pleasure of the sponsor?
Well, Mr. President, I don't think it's a violation of any law by including this.
No, not anymore. Remember, we agreed yesterday, because it's here now. Yeah, that's what I mentioned. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. President, since this is a new matter, which involves technology and maybe existing law really does not capture the new forms of fraudulent acts involving SIM and eSIM and variants thereof. Kasi iba na ito eh. May mga hindi na nga to SIM. Actually our measure hindi na SIM card. SIM na po ang mini-mention dito, tapos may eSIM pa and then variants of SIM. So sige, siguro as a compromise we will allow this to be retained in the version. So I am withdrawing my proposed amendment, Mr. President, on the deletion of spoofing. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to assure the minority leader that we are not allowing any other offenses to be mentioned because we already have a general term. Just those that are integral to the integrity of the registration system.
Thank you. And I think we have to be one ahead of the syndicates. Masyadong magaling na. They're very high-tech. So I think this is a new law. We should be one ahead of them when it comes to the definition of terms and the punishment that we'll be giving them. So thank you to the minority floor leader for drawing the motion.
the problem I have now, Mr. President, is my other proposed amendments had this philosophy that this is all about just mandating SIM card registration. So now I do not know if my Section 4 would be amendment to Section 4 on SIM registration would still capture the original intent of the author, Mr. President, because this changes the perspective of the law to just concentrate on SIM card registration. So I will now propose my amendment, Mr. President, and then await the reaction from the sponsor. On page 2, lines 17 to 20, delete the phrases deter the proliferation of SIM or electronic communication aided crimes such as but not limited to terrorism, text scams, unsolicited, indecent or obscene messages, bank fraud, and massive disinformation, and replace this phrase with regulate the registration and use of SIMs. Therefore, this Section 4, paragraph 1 Section 4, paragraph 1 would now read as follows. In order to regulate the registration and use of SIMs, all PTEs shall require the registration of SIM as prerequisite to the activation thereof in accordance with the guidelines set forth under this Act.
We accept, Mr. President.
And Mr. President, my amendment is just grammar, so it will still apply. Insert the word the. Insert the word the before SIM. Shall require the registration of the SIM as a. Insert the word a after as a prerequisite.
As a prerequisite.
I accept, Mr. President.
correct. I accept also, Mr. President.
So all the words before sim, I think
Yes,
we will
yes.
put the word the.
Yes, for consistency.
Subject to style. We note
Subject
of
to
that
style.
and we think the.
There being no objection to the motion, the amendment's approved.
We accept and we apologize for this basic anong tawag doon, oversights, Mr. President.
Before the amendment of the minority leader, let me propose something that will be ahead in the numbering. On page 2, line 20, after the word all, delete the succeeding sentence until the period in line 21 and replace with the following. End users shall be required to register their, and then we'll add, their SIM with PTEs as prerequisite to the activation thereof in accordance with the guidelines set forth under this act. I so move.
As a prerequisite, Your Honor, let's insert the word A.
As a prerequisite, yes. Thank you to the good senator from Taguig.
So it's
Grammar natin, ano ba yan?
so my amendment was accepted subject to such amendment from the sponsor. We agree, Mr. President. Yeah.
There being no objection
Clear
to the
naman.
amendments are approved.
Okay, saan na ba tayo?
Okay.
Where are we now? 9:20.
I have one on line 22. If
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you.
Senator
but-
Cayetano,
But
recognized.
thank you, Mr. President. Insert again, similar to the proposals I've made. After the word all on line 22, insert the word the and put an S after the word sim. So all the sims.
So, move na kaya natin.
All the sim.
Move na natin lahat.
Hindi, iba kasi hindi kailangan.
I think the proposal of Her Honor earlier was correct, that subject to style, we'll put the, but like I have to put the S at the I. If it's not all, then there won't be any S at the end of sim. So we have to be
Okay,
grammatically correct. Let's try our best to be, Your Honors.
we accept.
Yes, there being no objection to the motion, the amendment of Senator Cayetano, it's accepted.
The same in that same paragraph, Mr. President, the concept of authorized resellers, we want it to be introduced. So we want the second paragraph of section 4 to be amended in order to read as follows. Saan ba yung Danny Nipi? For purposes of this act, comma, all the sims,
All the sims.
to be sold by the PTEs, tama ba?
Tama.
Its agents, authorized resellers, or any entity shall be in a deactivated state, period. It shall only be activated after the end user completes the process of registration. Mali pa tayo.
Process. I agree and I accept, Mr. President.
So that introduces just authorized resellers, Mr. President.
Amendment accepted. Next.
Page 2.
I have one on page 2, line beginning with line 25. Any?
Just to point out before His Honor continues, the general rule will not apply because it will not sound right if we say all existing the SIM subscribers. So no comment there.
Okay.
All existing.
Please proceed, Minority Floor Leader, on your amendment on 925.
Okay.
It will, as is.
I get it.
That's why my
I get it,
point
Mr.
is bear
President.
with me, but we have to be correct here in our grammar.
Anong diferensya nito?
Yes, please proceed, Your Honor. Minority Floor Leader.
This is the beauty of having a straightforward bill, Mr. President. We really have time to look at the grammar as well.
Yes.
Sometimes when it becomes too complicated, we tend to overlook.
Although in the end,
Very
before we
basic
approve it, we always say subject to style and
Yes.
This one is,
grammatical.
Mr. President, this
Yes.
one is really actually styling, only styling. But yes, if we can amend The third paragraph of section 4 found in lines 25 to 29. Diretsuhin ko na lang to read as follows. All existing SIM subscribers shall register the same with their respective PTEs within 180 days also in number in numerals close parenthesis 180 days from the effectivity of this act, period. The Department of Information and Communications Technology, open parenthesis DICT, may extend the registration for a period not exceeding 120 days, period, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr.
So that's
President.
actually styling.
I
Amendment
accept.
is accepted by the sponsor.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. Page 3.
Page 3.
We have on line 19.
I have on line 11, Mr. President.
I have on line,
The sponsor. What line is the sponsor's
Page 3.
amendment?
11 yung take-off.
Oh, okay. Maybe we can hear the...
Yes.
So, minority
Minority
floor leader.
Page 3, line 11, it's just replacing SIM buyer with end user.
I accept, Mr. President.
And to do the same on page 3, line 15. Ganun din, same SIM buyer, end user.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Amendments are accepted.
Thank you. I give way, Mr. President.
I believe
Should I
Senator
proceed
Cayetano.
On
Yes,
line
please.
19, yes. Actually, before I propose my amendment, I will need to get clarification from the sponsor. Is it my understanding that based on the current wording of the bill, the registration of a SIM by a minor shall not be prohibited? In other words, it's allowed. But the provision goes on to say that the minor shall obtain the consent of the parent. Aside from the consent of the parent, let's bear in mind that as a minor, there are they cannot really enter into contracts. And technically, the registration, I look at our minority floor leader to help me out here, but it's like a contract because, diba, they will act. That's a subscription agreement, so it is a contract. So I guess my question to Her Honor is, am I correct in understanding that the objective is to allow the minor to register, but that the parent's consent may be obtained? And if that is correct, then my additional information is that it's the parent who would be bound by that contract, and therefore, if that is correct, if all of those are acceptable, then I will then propose a change. I will propose the deletion of subparagraph D. For something that is more reflective of that, Your Honor.
So basically, Mr. President, I just want to get clarification from the senator from Taguig. What you're saying is that minors cannot register, period, because they cannot enter into a contract?
My understanding is to register, you sign a subscription agreement, and an agreement requires to be the age of consent. You have to be at the age of consent.
I guess, Mr. President, technically, it's the parents or the guardian that will give consent. Should we say that the parent or guardian
so
should
if I may,
enter, co-sign?
yeah, something like that. So what I can propose, but subject to style, subject to Her Honor's preference, I can give a suggestion. So to delete the entire letter D and replace it with the following: the registration of a SIM by a minor shall be under the name of the minor's parent or legal guardian, provided that the minor's parent or legal guardian shall give their consent and register the SIM.
I will accept, Mr.
I think that can still be improved. I'm grappling with this because I just put it together now.
Subject to style.
Subject to style.
The point here being is, number one, it will actually be under the name of the parent.
The parent, yes.
But I had to add that it's the parent that will do the registration, because the child cannot just go there and say that I have the consent. Otherwise, what? We will say, kailangan ng affidavit.
I have a
How
question
do
to
we
the
do that?
sponsor, my distinguished colleague from Taguig. What if our children have cell phones? Like I have, my daughter's 14, has
It's
a
registered with you.
postpaid, not a prepaid. So it's registered with, is it registered with my wife or is it registered with my daughter? I think it's in my daughter's name.
Postpaid, Your Honor.
You, definitely.
Hindi ba pwede?
With the adult, Mr.
Parent
President.
ba?
It has to be with the adult, Mr.
Ah, okay,
President.
okay. I
Most
don't know.
likely it's the
My
adult,
wife got the
because
number
part
from
of
my-
the requirement of the provider would be a billing address and so on and so forth. So I would assume that it's under your name and Your Honor is paying for it.
Yes, absolutely. I know it's paying for
Mr.
I can see it
President,
every month.
As
Yes.
long as Your Honor's not using the cell phone of his children.
So I'm just getting clarification. So this is the same. It's gonna still be the same, that the parent or guardian. Guardian, because there are some children who are naulila na.
Yes,
Diba?
we
Yes.
say parent or guardian.
Legal guardian.
Yes. Okay.
Well, actually, from my experience, Your Honors, in crafting bills for foster children, abandoned children, medyo mahirap yung legal guardian dahil iilan lang. You have to go to court to be a legal guardian. So, are we willing? I defer to the chairperson and the body. Are we willing to just say guardian, which is a little bit more permissive?
Mr. President, I agree. Just the word guardian, because as long as the identity of the guardian
Can be
is not
traced.
fraudulent and
Yes.
can be traced.
Oh, because you don't also want to have a syndicate head be so-called guardian to these kids so that they can be registered under these children's names. So we don't want that to happen also.
So we wanted legal guardian.
But Mr. President, if that is the case, then there will be a lot of children who have no access to their parent. Yung nakikitira sa tita, nakatira sa tita, nakatira sa lola, nakatira sa distant relative, even sa kamag-anak. I think what Her Honor said earlier was that you can still trace that guardian. That guardian, quote unquote, unregistered guardian can be traced.
And Mr. President, if it's found out that that guardian is just posing as a guardian but no real relationship with the child, he can still be held accountable. So in cases of syndicates, they'll always try to subvert the law, but then at least we are, without being unnecessarily too stringent, we are still allowing kids to have access, but with one layer of safety.
Okay, so,
So,
what is the amendment, sir? So
I think the amendment has been accepted.
Yes,
no?
I
But-
accepted it.
But just to be clear, no, we are clear that the registration is not done by the minor, it's done by an adult. On behalf of the minor, the
Yes.
adult may be a parent or a guardian.
Yes, Mr.
Okay,
President.
and then siguro the provision found its way into this measure because we just want to highlight also that the use by a minor of a SIM is not prohibited.
Yes.
Importante, pero importante, registered pa rin at dumaan sa adult.
Yes.
Ganun po ba?
So, Mr. President, I have a question for the sponsor. I think Her Honor has technical people from NTC here. So, pag ganon, kasi madami tayong users, no? Baka we can ask them, ilan ang users na minors? Would there be included in the registration that it's the minor using it? Just so that there's baka mami magturuan sila ay. So, you know, like the credit card that you can give to your dependents, di ba? At least it's in the name of your daughter or whoever your dependent is. So there's in a way an arm's length.
Normally, I
think
think
it's
they would
difficult.
put that in their IRR.
So they
Yeah, I
can
think
do
the
that.
fine details will be in the IRR.
Yeah, they can do that.
Yes.
That my question was simply, can they do that so that the information is clear?
I'm sure after this law is passed, Madam Senator, I'm sure that the NTC together with the telcos will come up with an
Yeah.
IRR
And an
and
app.
implementing rules on the ground when they sell these SIMs.
Okay,
And,
I'm fine with that.
But my question would, I would just to add to that is, once this is passed and made into law, the existing prepaid owners will have to register. Is that correct?
Within 120 days.
120 days. Okay.
Nandito, 120 days.
Okay. It was accepted, Mr. President, so
Okay,
we can move.
let's move forward. Next amendment.
forward.
Saan na ba tayo?
Still on page 3, Mr.
Page
President.
3.
So let me just clarify, the amendment of Senator Cayetano is accepted.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay.
Subject to style.
All right, let's move forward. Any more on page 3?
Yes, on page 3, line 16, after the word phrase, after the phrase power of, replace the word authority with the word attorney. I so move.
Saan po yan?
Sorry, which line? Hindi ko makita. May there.
Page 3.
On
Page
page 3, line 16,
16.
But I think it's
After-
a different one, Your Honor. I can't.
Yeah,
find
because
it.
our page 3, 916 is passport in the case,
case of
of aliens.
aliens.
Mr. President, this is an amendment to my previous amendment in section 5B.
Section 5.
So, it's being showed in the screen,
Yun yung haba na ano.
Yung kanina.
right column.
5B, presentation of valid government issued cards, yun ba yun?
Okay,
Or a valid?
so you want to add this highlighted version for juridical
No, no.
entities, the certificate of registration?
Replace the highlighted version.
Replace the word.
Oh, we replace it.
Attorney.
No, just, okay, there. Replace the word authority with attorney in case of other entities shall be
So
presented.
special power of attorney.
Special power of attorney as opposed to special power of authority. Yeah, just a,
You want to add that highlighted version? It's not right now in
There eh.
yeah,
subsection B.
yeah, that's right.
It was an accepted.
It was
It was
accepted
an
last
accepted
time.
amendment, but we'll
All
just
right.
put
Okay.
attorney as opposed to authority.
All right.
No,
The
this was
committee
not
report was given
accepted
to
last
me.
time. This is the time when I stood up to say na we need to
Yes.
see kasi mahaba-haba
Oh,
na po
okay.
yung ano.
That's why it's not in
So,
the
ito
rec.
po yun.
All right. There any question, objection? There being none, motion is accepted. Amendment is accepted.
On page 4, line 3, section 5, insert a new paragraph that reads, SIMs that are registered under E parenthesis I of this section shall only be valid temporarily in increments of 7, 14, 30, 60, 90 days as the case may be and shall automatically be activated from expiration of the validity of the SIM. I so move, Mr. President.
Is it activated or deactivated?
Deactivated.
Deactivated.
I so move.
There being no
Subject to
objection?
style.
Subject to style. There being no objection to the motion, the amendment's approved.
How about, we're now on page 4 unless
Page 4.
Actually,
I
Mr.
still
President.
have on page 3.
Yes.
With the indulgence of the sponsor, can I see the wording again? Did it refer to EI only? Yeah, I think, and I may need more time to study this. It may have to also refer to E2.
That's the same for foreign nationals.
Correct, and E2 also refers to foreign nationals, but for those staying beyond 30 days, and this reflects beyond 30 days as well.
Then for all.
That's from my initial reading.
Subsection E. We can
Then we can drop the I. We'll just put subsection E.
And I want to be sure, Your Honors, I cannot state that I have thought of all the consequences because E2 refers to workers or students, etc., etc. I don't want to impose additional burden to non-tourists. So may I ask the NTC to think of this? I just want to be clear. What we're guarding against is they leave and then their SIM card is lying around and somebody else will use it. On that note, I'd like to add, no, ease of doing business. We don't want foreign workers we're welcoming here to say na napakahirap naman dyan sa Pilipinas, yung SIM card mo mamamatay after 30 days or after 90 days, and then in our neighboring countries, it's not like that. So that's not our objective, Your Honor.
Well, actually, Mr. President, apparently in Singapore, this is how it is. It's always in increments because there's always a shorter term for them to be here, and they can always extend. They'll just have
that's
to
also good.
re-register. Because if they get the 90 days, that's already 3 months, more or less.
That's good because there's a lot of illegal aliens here now from a particular country who come here and stay as long as they want. And
So at least there's another check, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Correct.
if their visa's valid or not. I mean, we're not the only country in Asia imposing this. Singapore.
in other
is
words,
also
when you
doing
purchase, the option is you can have a SIM card for 7 days, or you can purchase the 14 days, or the 30 days, or the 60 days, or 90 days. Is that correct? So
yes.
there's corresponding price rates for these
it. Yes, Mr.
when you're
President.
buying the SIM card at the airport, for example. Tama yan.
Yes.
So you have these options.
Right.
So if you're only in the country for 5 days, do you buy the
The 7
7 day?
days.
Okay. So they have an option. What's important is they have an option.
Yeah.
Okay. Is
So,
that all right to our
unless there's-
distinguished colleague from Taguig? I think that's also
Yes, Your
good
Honor.
because
I have no proposal. I was just
Thinking
sharing
aloud.
my thoughts with the
Yes.
body so we can be sure of the repercussions of our amendments.
Thank you. So there being no objection to that proposal, amendments accepted.
So the amendment is only about E.
Only for
subparagraph
those who foreigners,
I.
travelers.
Yeah. I.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Ito na. I think Senator Coco has.
Yes, page 4, yes. Page 4 has section 6 beginning on line 5 been amended in the last session? Parang meron yata.
Yes, we already
to what
have
extent, to what extent, Mr. President?
Yes, I already have an amendment to this effect approved earlier, Mr. President.
Sige. Can the sponsor propose an amendment by just adopting my observation that SIM buyer is also found at the end of section 6 paragraph 1, so palitan na rin po natin ng end user si SIM buyer.
Okay. Pwede na, di ba? Yes, I accept, Mr. President.
And then I will defer now to the amendment of the sponsor on paragraph 1 of section 6. May we hear the amendment, Mr. President?
Just read it again.
Yes, paragraph 1 of section 6. 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Na,
Delete the phrase a centralized and replace it with its respective. That's actually what the amendment wants, and it was approved last time.
okay. So the electronic registration form shall be kept by the concerned PTE in its database.
Respective database.
In its respective database.
Sorry.
It's the same as
I know, but the word respective, I do not know if that's necessary, Mr. President. Kasi it's basta the electronic
in its database.
in its database, Mr. President. Yeah.
Okay, in its database.
Okay.
I accept the amendments to
are
remove
accepted.
the word respective.
The amendments accepted.
Okay.
Mr. President, okay, so then we are on page 4, first paragraph of section 6.
I have on page 4, which is line 3.
Okay.
So
yes.
maybe we can
go ahead.
go with that first. Wait. No. Apparently we're done with that.
Page 4.
Oh, you go ahead. I
Yes,
think the number now.
Yes, Mr. President, just to make sure, no, line 7, page 4, to insert the phrase after the words activate or deactivate, we insert a SIM or. So the sentence will read, the database shall strictly serve as a SIM register to be used by PTEs to process, activate or deactivate a SIM or subscription, etc. Mr. President.
I accept, Mr. President.
Amendments accepted.
Mr. President, we have the SIM amendment in page 4, line 3. But actually, it's the exception to the SIM, the general rule of the SIM amendment. It
The
is,
SIM.
I propose, Your Honor, line 3,
Facilitate the SIM.
after the word facilitate, insert the word all SIM registrations,
All
SIM registrations.
Yes.
Also an S after registration,
Yes.
shall facilitate all SIM registrations.
Okay. I accept to facilitate all SIM registrations, plural.
Amendments accepted.
Thank you, Your Honors.
Saan tayo? Nahilo
Ano tayo sa line 20?
Line 12?
On the registry.
Ano lang yan? Ano pa tayo?
I still have another one on line 4. Sorry, page 4. Can I proceed?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. I defer to the chairperson, but I have a concern on the use of the word the word of the use register on line 22. It says, in case of a cyber attack on the register. It's not clear to me what the register is, so is it correct? Is the proper term on the database?
Yeah.
May ano lang, para hindi na magulo yung thought niya.
Yeah, we can be more specific and clear, and we can put attack on the database
Okay, Your
of
Honor.
the registration database, or we can just put database.
Because that section in the earlier paragraphs refers to the electronic registration form that is in the database. So I think it is clear enough to refer to the database, Your Honor. So my proposal would be the database.
Into information.
SIM register. SIM data.
Maybe it's because of the title that says SIM register as opposed to SIM database. So the SIM register
Or it's the SIM registry.
shall be kept by the concerned PTE in a central database. But we can, I think it's pretty clear that the database is what keeps all the registry of information. So
Maybe we can just replace the title SIM registry.
maybe we can put SIM database. No. SIM information.
Definition of the use.
Use registry.
Electronic registration.
Line ano na?
During the BICAM, we used
Registry.
registry because the House insisted.
That's what it is.
But we first used SIM registry. Initially, this is what the first version that we had that was approved. But the House insisted that it's called register.
It's a register. I don't have very strong feelings about it, Your Honor. I don't want to complicate Her Honor's life. I just feel it makes more sense to say registry. But there may have been reasons that I am not aware of. So, in case on the register. I see the point. Her Honor wants to be consistent with the use of register, registry, or database. Perhaps
Well,
NDC.
apparently they did their research and that's the appropriate term.
Or if it is, sorry, this is not what Her Honor said, SIM register is the appropriate term.
Yes.
In that case then, I will change my amendment to refer to the SIM register on line 22 then. In case of a cyber attack on the SIM register, because that is the title of
Yeah.
the article, the section.
Yes.
And that's capital S and capital R.
Ano saan yun?
And take note, it is the SIM.
Yes. Yes. I accept.
Okay, Your Honor.
Okay, amendments accepted.
Thank you,
I have-
Mr. President. Anterior amendment.
I have an. Oh, okay. Okay.
Anterior, I just allowed the discussion to continue so that the train of thought will not be, anong tawag mo doon? It will not be disrupted. Page 4, line 20, if we can replace the word subscriber with end user.
Yes.
That's the motion, Mr. President.
I
Accepted
accept.
by the sponsor,
Yes.
therefore amendments accepted.
I also have on page 4, delete lines 19 to 21.
19? 19. Oh. Okay.
Natanggal yung sa kanya.
We will delete it?
Nawala yung amendment dito. We
To
delete
be,
po lahat yun.
delete to be
Yours is
replaced?
22, I think, Mr. President. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
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 Ulit.
On page 4, delete lines 19 to 21. And replace it with the following paragraphs. In case of any change in the information after the registration of the SIM or the loss of SIM, death of the subscriber or any request for deactivation, the subscriber shall inform the PTE through its facility established for such purpose, provided that in the case of death of a subscriber, such fact may be reported to the concerned PTE by the immediate family, relatives, or legal guardian. In case of any change in the information after registration, the concerned PTE shall clearly note such change in its database. In case of loss, in case of loss of SIM, death of the subscriber or request for deactivation, the concerned PTE shall deactivate said SIM within 24 hours from the report of the subscriber, provided that regardless of any deactivation, the relevant data and information shall be retained by the PTE pursuant to the pertinent provision of this act, which is 10 years. I so move, Mr. President.
Can we look at the last paragraph?
Yes.
Yung provided, hindi na umakyat eh.
Provided
Up or down?
Up.
down. Ah.
Ano ba yung...
It's the top
down.
paragraph.
Bring it up. Hindi, mali. Okay, bring it down.
Down.
Okay. More.
Provided, you know. Sa pinakababa. Sa
Provide.
pinakababa.
I'm looking at the right side eh. So, nasa left pala.
Yan, nasa left. Provided that regardless of any deactivation.
Okay.
I have comments, Your Honor.
Haba.
Insert the word "the" in before the word "SIM." In one of the second time the word "SIM" appears in the first paragraph. The loss. Loss of the SIM. Okay, and then would Her Honor like to act on that for lack of for
I
this year?
accept, Mr. President.
Thank you. And then
Accepted.
Amendment is accepted.
thank you.
Mr. President.
And then, Your Honors, I believe that the word "may" with reference to the family of the deceased should be changed. My proposal is to change the word "may" to "shall," because shouldn't it be somebody's responsibility and not just be permissive?
Yes, that's a good suggestion. I accept, Mr. President. Shall be reported.
And again, should we delete the word "legal"? Can we ask the Senate President to act on that
Yes,
first?
the first amendment was accepted by the sponsor.
And then, consistent with our previous discussions, the word "legal," should we delete that? Can we delete that, Your Honors?
Yes,
Madam
Mr.
Chairperson.
President.
The amendment is accepted.
And then I have one more, Your Honors, with reference to the sentence on reporting. Where is that?
That's it.
In case of loss, SIM, death of the subscriber, or the or request of the shall be activated from the report of the subscriber, and he could be dead. So therefore, or the subscriber or yung aforementioned, the family members, etc. Your Honor.
Family
Subject to
report.
style.
Yeah.
Is it accepted by the sponsor?
Ah, yeah.
Subject
Family
to style?
member or guardian. Yeah.
Yeah.
O nga naman, kung patay na, paano nga naman?
And then also, I think it would sound better if we say in case of the loss. In case of loss of the SIM. Sorry, loss of the SIM.
I accept, Mr. President.
Thank you. So that completes it for that paragraph, Your Honors, for that provision.
The
this
amendment's
provision.
accepted by the sponsor.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes, Senator Tolentino.
just an anterior amendment, if this might be correct, because I heard, I don't have a copy of that, but I heard 10 years coming from the sponsor, just for purposes of consistency and harmonization with existing laws. Would 7 years be more appropriate? Because under the civil code, it is a person is presumed dead if you don't appear within the period of 7 years. An absence of 7 years, you're presumed dead. So for purposes of consistency, perhaps the 10-year period, which I heard, if I'm not mistaken, should likewise be 7 years.
Mr. President, this is just for consistency. We are basing it on certain crimes that have expiry period, what do you call it? Prescription period up to 20 years. So, I know when it comes to death, I mean, if you don't show up for 7 years, you're considered lost or dead. But there are other crimes, for example, murder, the prescription period is longer. So just for consistency, kasi mahirap naman, Mr. President, kung for death, for the information on the dead will only be kept for 7 years. I mean, it's good to have a longer repository of all of these informations, and the telcos agreed. So I unfortunately, I would like to retain our
I
version.
agree, Mr. President. I just want that to be placed on record that the person absent for 7 years is presumed dead for purposes of the Civil Code of the Philippines. Just for the record, Mr. President. Wala kasi akong hawak nitong akong hard copy nito. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. So, yes, Minority
So
Leader.
the amendments introduced elaborated on a one paragraph original version. So it's now subject to style na lang, Mr. President, just in case ma-compress pa yung wording.
Okay, I agree. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the subject to style is if the Secretariat can take a look at the elaboration, the additional paragraphs, if we could change the word subscriber to end user, kasi si end user mas malawak na concept.
Maybe we can make that an
subscriber.
omnibus. Maybe we can make that an omnibus motion accepted by the sponsor instead of subscriber to end user.
We defined end user to include the subscriber na.
For that section, we accept, but not omnibus, because,
Yes.
Mr. President, sometimes the end user is the child, but the subscriber might be also liable if they are fraudulent in their
Correct.
So for this section only,
Yeah.
for this section, is that the amendment?
Yeah, just for that section.
So subject to style, the amendment's accepted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Where are we now, Mr. President?
We're still on page 4, Mr.
We're still
President.
page 4.
I have an amendment in line 24 unless there are anterior amendments, Mr. President.
Sige, go ahead.
Both of my colleagues, Senator Cayetano and Senator Pimentel.
I don't see them raising their hand. Please
Mr.
go ahead.
President, on page
Majority
4, line 24, insert a new paragraph. We have talked about this last session. This is about the reporting mechanism. It would insert a new paragraph which states, public telecommunications entities shall provide user-friendly reporting mechanisms for their respective subscribers upon the latter's receipt of any potentially fraudulent text or call, and shall, upon due investigation, deactivate either temporarily or permanently the SIM used for the fraudulent text or call. So move, Mr. President. That's
I
our
have
proposal.
accepted, Mr. President.
It's accepted by the sponsor. No objections.
Thank you, Mr. President.
That would
Thank you.
form part of Section 6. Parang naging last paragraph siya ng
Yes,
Section 6.
Mr. President.
Okay. On Section 7, Mr. President.
Please
Still on page
proceed.
4.
Okay.
Section 7.
Section 7. Page 4, line 24. Before the word agent, I move that we insert the word its, and after the word agent, insert a comma, and insert the phrase authorized resellers. Therefore, making the Section 7 read as follows. Sale of fraudulently registered or stolen SIM, period, dash, any PTE, comma, its agents, comma, authorized resellers, comma, or entity that will engage in the sale of fraudulently registered or stolen SIM shall be held criminally liable under this Act.
Accepted, Mr. President.
The amendment's accepted.
Mr. President, can I ask a clarificatory question?
Please go
I
ahead.
support this amendment. I have no problem with that. Because my amendment, my question first, and depending on the answer would be my amendment. Does a natural person who sells their SIM, is that a crime under this Act? Because I didn't see anything to that effect.
Mr. President, the holder of the SIM should be the person that's registered.
Correct.
That's pretty the intention of this.
Yes. So if they sell it, then it should be. Is it Her Honor's intention that they should not be selling it? They cannot sell. A natural person cannot register and then sell it to somebody else. Is that correct? No. Let's say it's validly registered, but I want I registered it, and this person A, for some reason, just wants to be messaging people without his true identity. He buys my SIM, and I agree to sell it. So where's the crime there? The selling, the buying, or both, or none?
It's in selling a SIM that is not activated yet, that has been activated under your name. That's
Yes.
where the crime is.
So if that is a crime, I don't think we've defined it. So if the intention is to define it, then we can make a proposal. And is it the selling or also the buying? And what if there is no consideration?
So, if there is no consideration, then it is in the using.
Yes, the using.
It is in the using.
The using with intent to defraud? Because what if there is no intent to defraud and I just borrow my staff's, sa atin na lang po, di ba? If I use my staff's number and says, Senator Pia to, I'm not trying to defraud anyone, I'm just using my staff's phone because
Yes.
for whatever personal
So
reason.
maybe it's in the selling.
Sale and use.
The selling, the buying, or the using?
Of use. Sale and use.
Hindi nga yung sinasabi niya yung example. You should. Yeah, they use. The SIM was
teka.
registered by someone, like if I use your phone.
But it's not fraudulently registered.
As long as it's not
Properly registered.
As long as it's not fraudulently registered, Mr. President. I mean, I guess you can still sell a SIM. Oh, but then
Yeah, your
it's already
problem.
in your name, eh.
Well,
So,
that is a possibility. The syndicates will use or buy people's SIM.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing now.
so maybe we should.
Even GCash accounts. Apparently, they're buying GCash accounts.
If you sell yours, you have to report the change.
If you sell your SIM, Mr. President, you have to report the change within a certain number of days.
If
Why
they do
would
not,
somebody
may
sell
I ask the sponsor if they do not?
Then that person who sold will still be the one responsible, and they'll have to be able to connect the dots to the other person who may have purchased it from him or her.
But Your Honor, if I may comment on that, that as the Senate President said, that's exactly how they do this. They'll use a naive person and offer them money, and we'll have now hundreds and thousands of naive people who will say, di ko naman alam eh, binili lang sa akin ng 1,000 or 10,000 pesos tong SIM card ko. So our recommendation would be to study this with the view of penalizing the sale and the purchase with intent. The sale should be, I think, penalized right away. But I defer to the experts. I'm just really just sharing my concerns here, Your Honors. Madam Chairman.
What is the suggestion of our good senator from Taguig?
So Your Honors, Madam Chairperson, if indeed the intention is for that registry to remain reliable, then disposing of that SIM, number one, for a fee, could possibly be criminalized. The purchase could possibly be criminalized if there's intent to defraud, with or the purchaser or the user, the recipient, if there's intent to defraud. I wouldn't know, and that's where we need to ask the experts.
Could it be something like any SIM registered in a person's name cannot be sold to another? Like, even if you're a reseller, what you're selling are SIMs that haven't been registered yet.
Unregistered, unactivated.
So any activated SIM cannot be sold to a different person.
So shall be prohibited and shall be penalized.
Yes, I suppose, yeah.
Mr. President, if I may join in the discussion. Dito na papasok yung binanggit ko sa interpellation na hindi lang to kasi SIM card, eSIM. There will soon be a hardware, telephone, na wala ng slot for a SIM card.
No, that's right. So any SIM.
So, eSIM na po siya.
So, Mr. President.
Therefore, if we prevent the selling of the SIM, you cannot sell the cell phone.
No, not the cell phone. The SIM, the number.
Yes,
No,
but
that's why. So
ano na siya?
nobody can sell
Hardwired.
any SIM that is activated already.
Yeah, we have to be sure of that, Madam Chair, because it will be a possibility. I don't think it's a possibility. It will be done that they will just buy SIM from people that have
Legitimate.
No,
legitimate
So, no.
applications.
Exactly, but
So we have to determine, will it be illegal for the alley on the street corner to sell her SIM card
yes,
for 5,000?
it will be illegal to sell any registered SIM.
Okay, that's clear.
Yeah.
President,
It
should
will
be
be
clear.
illegal to sell any registered SIM.
Yes, Senator Tolentino.
Mr. President, if I can just join in, perhaps the word knowingly, quote unquote, should be considered, because there are people, including me, who would want to acquire a SIM with a good number, 8888, 99999, without these are vanity SIM numbers. So without the intent of committing a violation relative to a fraudulently registered or
No,
stolen
Mr.
SIM.
President, this is just if you buy a SIM that's already registered to a person. Obviously, if you just want a vanity number, if that number is already assigned to a person, you won't be able to get it.
So perhaps
Because you go directly to the telecommunications company. You don't go to an individual and ask for his number. Now, if that person will want to give you his number, he has to go to the NTC or get in touch with them, the telco provider, and say that he's giving up that number.
So in effect, Mr. President, the knowingly, the intent, the scienter is the correct word. Alam mo na registered yon, ginamit sa yan yet binili mo pa. Di po ba?
Mr. President.
You ask your staff, Mr.
No,
President,
because
to
no.
know the definition of scienter.
Can you, maybe the good gentleman from Cavite can enlighten us
So
himself?
this is the intent to commit to violate the law. Alam mo na, bawal
Mr.
yun.
President, gagawin kasing reason na hindi ko alam eh.
So it's simpler. What you want to do is to make it simple. Bawal magbenta ng SIM.
Bawal magbenta ng SIM. Bawal bumili ng SIM na nakarehistro sa
May
iba.
tao.
Yes.
So I think the correct term there is mala prohibita. So bawal bilhin na registered na. So pag binili mo, in violation ka.
Siguro, Mr. President, this is na lang what we can put.
No, I just
SIM
joined the conversation to clarify and to interject some legal terms
Yes.
that probably should be there. Knowingly, and this will be part of the statutory construction
Yes.
in case an interpretation will be asked in court hearings, in court cases that
Yes,
will be
actually
filed.
simpler. It's just bawal na magbenta, bawal din bumili.
Yan, kasi nga, regardless of intent, Mr.
Yes,
President.
regardless of
Otherwise, people will just drag on in court. It is not my intention. I didn't
Yes.
know. Ignorance
And we'll
of the
have
law
a lot
is
of
not
gray
an
areas
excuse.
in this measure.
Any SIM, what we can add is any registered SIM cannot be sold subsequently.
Okay.
I so move.
Yes,
Okay.
but for the record, no, to be clear, before the Senate President acts upon it, that does not prevent the scenario that the gentleman from Cavite pointed out, where if I approach somebody with a number that I like and they agree in principle, then you can register that new number because you will register it. So just for the record, that will not prevent anyone from acquiring their favorite number,
That's exactly
their sun,
what I
their
said,
moon
Senator
sign.
Pia. They can give up that number, but they have to go through the telecommunications company. So you can still have your vanity number, but then you cannot do it unilaterally. You have to go through the telcos.
And the telcos, Madam Sponsor,
We'll
we
change
can
the
include that in
information.
the rules, no? That can easily be covered by the rules
That
on
the
the
number
process for
can
those
be-
who want to acquire a vanity number.
In fact, Mr. President, if you don't like your number anymore, you want to change it, all you have to do is notify them to assign you another number. Now, if you want to go one step further, for those who would like to acquire a vanity number, then I guess we can say that with the telco is still mandated, if they give you that vanity number, you'll still have to activate it and give your information.
Yeah, I just joined the conversation, Mr. President, to clarify everything. So the telco, it will in effect be the gatekeeper in all of this. Am I
Yes, they are the gatekeepers of the information, but that information can be shared with the proper authorities as long as they have subpoena powers and they have a reason to subpoena it.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, let's proceed.
So Your Honors, we will have we will await the sponsors a provision on that because we have not covered that it's not covered in the bill.
What is not covered? The vanity number?
No, the sale of a registered SIM. I'm
We
not aware.
already added the subsequent any registered SIM cannot be sold subsequently.
Okay.
That was just recently added.
And may we know, Your Honor, Madam Chairperson, what is the penalty? Do we have a penalty clause that refers to that? Just to point it out so that
Oh,
this
yeah,
amendment
since
is
it's a
covered.
newly added
Yes.
line.
Any registered SIM cannot be subsequently sold.
For sale of fraudulently registered or stolen SIM, I think this will be changed. The penalty of imprisonment of no less than 6 years or a fine of 200,000 pesos, etc. So yes, it's there, I think, based on the penalty for sale of fraudulently
No, nandun ba in the registry?
Registered.
registered or so. Maybe we can add for sale of fraudulently registered, because when you already registered and you're giving it to somebody else, that's now fraudulently registered.
Yes, we're not changing that. We can just add sale of fraudulently registered or stolen SIM or subsequent.
Or we can add for sale of fraudulently registered or stolen SIM, and for subsequently
Registered SIM.
something like maybe subject to style, subsequently or prior
Previously registered
previously registered
SIM.
SIM
So for sale of fraudulently registered or stolen SIM
or previously
registered SIM.
would it be acceptable to our good independent senator from Taguig if we add for sale of fraudulently registered or stolen SIM and previously registered SIM?
So, sale of fraudulent or sale of sale of a previously. Does that end there? Sale of a there.
So it's going to be for sale of fraudulently registered or stolen SIM, comma, or previously registered SIM, period.
I think just the phrase previously registered SIM might be
Confusing.
vague, because as we discussed, right, it could have been previously registered but with the consent of NTC or
Right.
so we have to say something clearer on that line. For sale of or fraudulently registered or stolen. A previously registered SIM without the proper registration to the new owner.
Yeah, maybe a minute
Something
How
like
about,
that.
Mr.
Yeah, maybe we can
President?
ask that we'll suspend so that you can huddle, so that both of you can look at the amendment while I do a liquidity
rin.
break.
Okay.
So session suspended.
Bigay mo sa akin.
President, I move that we recognize the distinguished sponsor, Senator Grace Poe, and to introduce amendment, Senator Coco Pimentel, our minority leader.
Senator Grace Poe, the sponsor, is recognized, and likewise the minority leader to introduce the amendments.
Mr. President, based on the discussions we've had on the sale of a registered SIM earlier, this is the proposed language. On page 4, line 24, insert a new Section 7, which shall read as follows. Section 7, subsequent sale of a registered SIM. A registered SIM cannot be sold or transferred without complying with the registration requirements under Section 6 of this Act. Renumber the sections accordingly. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Yes,
Just
Senator
to
Tolentino.
clarify this. So the sale now would encompass, would have no distinction whether it is a fraudulently registered or stolen SIM or a SIM which was bought in good faith, utilized in good faith, etc. So is there no distinction, Your Honor?
Yeah, there will be no distinction, Mr. President, because it's already specified in section. It says that it should be compliant under Section 6 of this Act. So if it is not compliant with Section 6, then it will be in violation of this law.
So, Mr. President, am I correct to interpret that the former Section 7 stays? I'm referring to the sale of fraudulently registered or stolen SIM. The only difference is that it was fraudulently registered, and as part of the gatekeeping role of the regulatory agency, it will still have to undergo that process mentioned in Section 6. Am I correct? So
Yes,
wala na
Mr.
pong
President, we're just dropping the word fraudulently.
Oh.
So, sale of registered or stolen SIM, and then
We are dropping the word fraudulently registered.
we're
Hindi mo pa po binabasa.
if the kind gentleman from Cavite will allow us
Yes,
to
please proceed.
propose our next amendment, I think it will answer his question.
Yes, I will wait that next amendment, Mr. President.
Okay, so on page 4, line 24, delete section 7 and replace it with the following. Sale of a stolen SIM, any PTE, agent or entity that will engage in the sale of a stolen SIM shall be held criminally liable under this Act. And then renumber the sections accordingly.
I would like to retain my earlier amendment, Mr. President, which was accepted and already approved. Yung authorized reseller, just insert it, subject to style. Any PTE, its agents, authorized resellers, or entity.
I accept, Mr. President.
Yes, that was already accepted earlier, Mr. President.
So, under any other objections?
Ano na? Klaro ba sa'yo? Section 6? There's a new Section 6 eh. This,
Again, to
Yes,
clarify,
Senator Tolentino.
is that a new Section 6 or a new Section 7?
no.
It is still the Section 7.
Correct. There's a new
We are
Section 7.
dropping the word fraudulently registered because it was already covered in the previous amendment.
Mr. President, it's still section 7,
So a new
except that we dropped the word fraudulently
Fraudulently.
registered
Yes, we dropped the word fraudulently registered
or. So, so it's now sale of stolen SIM.
So, Mr. President, yeah.
Yes.
So, I thought there would be a distinction between the former Section 7, fraudulently registered and stolen. So, we still retain the stolen SIM connotation, Mr. President. What if it is not stolen? What if it is... I think the minority leader can properly expound on this because this was his amendment, Mr. President.
Pinanalyze naman.
No, it's not my amendment, Mr. President. The idea was introduced by Senator Pia.
Relevant siya.
Yung what if it is not a stolen SIM, but you sell or allow the use of a registered SIM by somebody else. Yun na nga yun, eh. It's not captured by the original Section 7.
Yes, that was what I was referring to in a conversation, Mr. President, with the minority leader. What if an OFW would be going abroad? And to retain that number, he passes on that SIM number to his daughter. Not stolen, but to be used in good faith. What would then be the tweak here, Mr. President? Will it have to be presumed as stolen? Kaya nga kanina pinapasok ko yung notion ng scienter.
Both of these are now
Knowingly with knowledge that it's gonna be used for wrongdoing. I did not invent that term, Mr. President.
Mr.
Na-confused
President,
ako. I'm sorry, Mr. President, kasi nag-iba ng question. Nag-usap kami ni minority leader dito.
I don't understand the concern of can I just read this? On page 4, line 24, insert a new section 7.
Yun.
So the new section 7 will now read subsequent sale of a registered SIM. A registered SIM cannot be sold or transferred without complying with the registration requirements under Section 6 of this Act. Meaning, a registered SIM can still be sold or transferred as long as you're compliant with Section 6 of this Act. Meaning, you have to re-register whoever the new owner will be, the date of birth of the new SIM owner, the address, etc. So you can still have your vanity number. And then for the other one, Section 8, this is now going to be a new section, which is sale of a stolen SIM. Any PTE, agent, and then also to add the amendment of the minority leader, authorized reseller or entity that will engage in the sale of a stolen SIM shall be held criminally liable under this Act. So, to the gentleman from Cavite, we are allowing, if you want to use a number, for example, and you just have to register again with the necessary documents.
Hindi, ma'am, sa screen kasi, Mr. President, yung title ng Section 7, mali eh.
Bakit ba hindi na?
Kaya kami kaya nagkakalituan eh. Yung nasa screen po ngayon mismo, yung nasa screen. Section 7, the title of the section is wrong.
So wala na yung fraud din.
I think that's amended already, minority leader.
Yes.
Wala na yung fraudulent. I think it was removed already.
That's why I'm saying na medyo mali yan.
That's the problem, kaya nagkakalituan.
Kaya nagkakalituan po. I'm just explaining bakit nagkakalituan.
Yeah.
Normally, okay. All right. So, any more questions?
No, di ba Section 7 is about the subsequent sale of a SIM?
Yes.
That's what the chair.
Yeah, look at the title, it's wrong. Eh. Kaya kami nagkakalituan.
Dinilit na po.
All the more na ngayon nagkakalituan na.
But that's what the chair mentioned kanina.
Yes, anyway.
Wag na lang ninyong panoorin yung screen na yan. Pakinggan ninyo ako,
Yeah.
Mr. President.
Okay na, okay na.
Yes,
Wag
probably
hindi nakaka-catch up katulad sa technology. Again,
If we may ask, Mr. President, again, the chairperson herself to read the Section 7 and Section 8, Mr. President.
Yes, sponsor, please read again the new
okay, Mr.
Section
President,
7.
this is to accommodate the concern of Senator Pia, okay, and also the concern of the minority leader. So let me just make it clear. On page 4, line 24, please look at your clean copies. Do not look at the screen. Insert a new section 7, which shall read as follows. Section 7. Subsequent sale of a registered SIM. A registered SIM cannot be sold or transferred without complying with the registration requirements under Section 6 of this Act. Now, if you're still not sure what Section 6 is, Section 6, and this is not an amendment, I'm just explaining it. Section 6, SIM register. The electronic registration form shall be kept by a concerned PTE to a centralized database. The database shall strictly serve as a SIM register to be used. The successful submission, in case of any change in the information after the registration of the SIM or the loss of SIM, death of the subscriber, or any request for deactivation, the subscriber shall inform the PTE through its facility established for such purpose, provided in the case of death or a subscriber, such fact may be reported to the concerned PTE by the immediate family, relatives, and guardians. In case any change in the information after registration, the concerned PTE shall clearly note such change in its database. So, nandun na. Section 8, on page 4, line 24, delete Section 7 and replace it with the following. Section 8, sale of a stolen SIM. Any PTE, agent, or entity that will engage in the sale of a stolen SIM shall be held criminally liable under this Act. And then renumber.
Hey, clear.
What does the minority leader have to say?
Okay, just final question. So we are dropping now the concept of a fraudulently registered SIM in the new Section 8. Kasi nag-stolen na lang po tayo eh.
We clarified it. We clarified it based on the suggestion of Senator Pia in the new Section 7 by saying that you have to comply with Section 6 of this Act. So if you're not complying with Section 6 of this Act, with regards to your SIM registration, you're in violation without having to go through the details again when it's already been spelled out in Section 6.
Okay, at least we are providing for the punishable acts under this law. Yun lang, I'm just worried na na-drop yung concept of a fraudulently registered SIM. But if it's if a fraudulently registered SIM is the same as an unregistered SIM, kasi iba kasi yung pag sinabi mo kasi fraudulently registered SIM, parang
Kaya nga tinanggal na eh.
tinanggal na. Sige pa. So, okay, so thank you for that. I have an amendment on page.
Are there any more objections?
Sorry.
Are there any more objections? There being none,
So
the amendment is approved.
Okay, next. Still on page 4?
I have one on page 5.
Oh, page 5. Mr. President, the minority.
Yes, minority leader is recognized.
Okay. On page 5, saan ba tayo? Beginning on line 22, I'm referring to section 10, paragraph A. Paragraph A. So, yes, okay.
Anterior amendment, Mr. President.
That,
Senator Tolentino is recognized.
yes, Mr. President. On Section 9, it's something to do with the disclosure of information. There is on line 11 the word subpoena, Mr. President. May I clarify from the good sponsor, Mr. President, the exact extent, boundary, the metes and bounds of subpoena? Who can issue the subpoena?
Mr. President, I think our good gentleman from Cavite, as a lawyer, would know who can issue a subpoena.
Yes.
So certain bodies like Congress, meaning the lower house and the upper house, the NBI, the BIR, of course the courts, And then I think that with certain, I think the President empowered also the PNP in certain matters. CIDG, Ombudsman, NAPOLCOM, PDEA.
Yes, Mr. President. I agree, Mr. President. The reason why I would want a clarification on this is because of the broad subpoena power being exercised by, like what the good sponsor mentioned a while ago, of the various agencies, and that refers to the Ombudsman under RA 6770, NBI, pursuant to RA 157, CIDG, PDEA, NAPOLCOM, BIR, the Blue Ribbon, Mr. President, the DOJ, Office of the Cybercrime, the Bangko Sentral Governor, PCGG, among others, Mr. President. That's why, Mr. President, my focus now is how do we narrow the definition here of the commission of the crime, because the broadness of the subpoena issuing entities would now encompass not just the reasons behind this law, this bill, such as those mentioned in the bill drafted by the good sponsor, Senate Bill 99, referring to heinous crimes such as terrorism, cyberbank heist, proliferation of unsolicited and indecent obscene messages, dissemination of massive information campaign which would cause chaos. But now with all the entities, agencies that can issue subpoena, we will now go into the realm, Mr. President, correct me if I'm wrong, into other crimes such as robbery, adultery, concubinage, murder, grave threats, homicide. Sa lawak po ng subpoena power ngayon, lalawak po ito na halos lahat ay makocover na lahat ng crime. So when the original intent, correct me if I'm wrong, is to limit and narrow it to the crimes mentioned in the explanatory note of the good sponsor, which is, as I have referred to a while ago, terrorism, cyberbank heist, proliferation of unsolicited indecent obscene messages, dissemination of massive information, and this emanated from the privileged speech of several of our colleagues, the text scams, etc., etc. So, hanggang saan po ba tayo, Mr. President? Dahil lahat na po ba ng crime o balik ulit tayo doon sa explanatory note, o kahit anong agency na mag-i-issue ng subpoena, kagaya nga ng Senate Blue Ribbon, pasok na rin na magagamit po itong Section 9 Disclosure of Information. Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, if I may answer, all of these government institutions that were mentioned were actually, some of us actually empowered them to have the subpoena powers. Okay, we approved it here. Now, we put here, it says that PTE shall be required to provide information obtained in the registration process only upon the issuance of a subpoena of a competent authority pursuant to an investigation of a sworn complaint that a specific mobile number was or is being used in the commission of a crime, or that it was utilized as a means to commit a malicious, fraudulent, or unlawful act, and that he or she is unable to ascertain the identity of the perpetrator. So there's actually a complainant, Mr. President. Hindi mo pwedeng gusto lang ng ombudsman o gusto lang ng NBI o gusto lang ng Senado na wala naman na nagko-complain na walang affidavit of a valid reason for the information to be obtained.
So Mr. President,
So, I mean, kung sabihin na natin, may lumapit sa atin, kasi adultery ito, tinan mo, gusto ko makita kung sino itong kausap. Sasabihin naman natin sa Senado, ano bang pakialam natin dyan? Di ba? Ngayon, kung makialam yung ibang agency, at sa tingin natin mali yun, yun abuse of power of their subpoena powers if it does not concern their agency.
So, Mr. President, having heard the explanation of the good sponsor, would it be really appropriate that we narrow down with complete specificity the crimes that should be covered by the subpoena in relation to the real purpose of this bill, as well as the messages we got from our colleagues relative to the text scams. Kasi po, halimbawa, yung text scam, hindi naman po basta-basta magpo-produce yun ng concubinage unless chismis siguro or adultery.
Mr. President,
or,
I'm sorry. I think we're already digressing. Okay?
No, Mr. President.
So, which agency, Mr. President, would the good gentleman from Cavite would want to exclude?
Yes, Mr. President, if I will refer to the original intent of this very good bill, I would propose that we limit ourselves with the subpoena powers that would involve crimes against national security, swindling and other deceits, bribery, direct and indirect, violation of the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, and spoofing.
No, Mr. President, we cannot because we're going back again to remember, we're just talking about the SIM registration, and
Yes.
we already tried to put swishing, smishing, and there's already been the objection to that. So I'm just saying that it's just basic, all of fraud, whatever fraud is committed. Let's not anymore go into detail. And what if it's not mentioned here, but it's actually something relevant to it, something significant and something important that we need to get the information of that subscriber. But the offense is not listed here.
Yes,
What
Mr.
will
President, I
happen?
understand. But if it does not involve fraud, for instance, would you consider adultery as fraud? Fraud, perhaps on the part of the other spouse. Would you consider grave threats as fraud? So fraud would, because Mr. President, I'm still looking at the explanatory note of the good
Maybe,
sponsor.
Mr. President, in the interest of time, I will wait for the amendment of the good
Yes,
gentleman from Cavite.
I have the amendment, Mr. President.
Okay, if you can
on
read
page
it now.
5, on page 5, this is my proposal, starting with the word pursuant on line 12, up to the word perpetrator, that's lines 12 to 15. Delete the same and replace it with the following words and phrases, to wit, and I quote, in relation to the commission of the crimes against national security, comma, swindling and other deceits, comma, bribery, open parenthesis, direct and indirect, comma, violation of the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, period.
What does the sponsor have
I
to
so
say?
move, Mr. President.
I'm sorry. I think it will be it will narrow down the effectivity of this law. So
Mr. President, if I may add, this will even strengthen the bill because probably we focus again on what is the original purpose. Terrorism, unsolicited messages, dissemination of massive disinformation campaign, yung mga nagte-text scam, hindi naman po siguro kasali yung mga ibang crimes na pasok sa revised penal code and other special laws. For instance, yung mga overspeeding, hindi naman pasok na ho yun sa, malayo na po yun sa text messages na. So, Mr. President, I'm just trying to strengthen the bill because we will still be encompassing all the original intent of our colleagues, but at the same time, do away with measures that are not supposed to be part of this. Even minor offenses, Mr. President, like for instance, minor theft, Mr. President. So how would you will what I foresee, Mr. President, and this will be part of the records, we will be expanding too much the subpoena powers of all the government agencies that can issue subpoena, but will affect the rights of privacy, freedom of expression, basic constitutional rights, which should not be affected because even a PIDEA, for instance, PIDEA has nothing to do. PIDEA has nothing to do with adultery. But if PIDEA will issue a subpoena beyond the beyond its drug mandate, I think it will be encompassed. So, nililimit po natin yung powers na mag-i-issue ng subpoena na hindi naman mayapakan yung karapatan ng ating mamamayan.
Mr. President,
Specific
can
na lang po yung
I
crime.
ask the Senator from Cavite to read to me again your proposed
yes.
amendment?
So from on page 5, that's on line 12, delete from the word pursuant to perpetrator on line 15 and replace it with the following. In relation to the commission of the crimes against national security, comma, swindling and other deceits, comma, bribery, open close parenthesis, direct and indirect, comma, violation of the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, period. So wala na po yung mga minor crimes, yung mga minor offenses, overspeeding, drunken driving.
Paano na ngayon yung mga nagsiswindle ng mga...
Pasok po, swindling, ma'am. Pasok din po.
Human trafficking.
Pasok din po.
No,
Crimes
but
against
then,
national
okay,
security.
What you're saying is, para hindi pakialaman ng ibang agencies
Yes.
na wala namang kinalaman
Yes.
yung ano na yun. Paano ngayon? You mentioned all of that.
May mga
ano ba yung pakialam ng, let's
May
say,
mga specific, ma'am, may
ng
mga
BIR sa
Yes.
terrorism, for example, well, sa bagay, the money laundering
Yes.
part. Ano yung adultery?
Saan papasok doon?
Saan doon?
Example ko lang po 'yan, ma'am, kanina halimbawa po ma'am rape. Halimbawa po rape, grave threats, homicide. So lahat po ng mga subpoena issuing agencies can dwell into something they're not supposed to delve on. So ngayon po, mangyayari nito, specific na lang. Si Ombudsman, Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Si BIR, Anti-Money Laundering, you mentioned. Bangko Sentral, Anti-Money Laundering. Napolcom, probably crimes against
Isn't
national
the problem,
security.
Mr. President, is if he puts that, every single agency, we're going to have to say, but the BIR can only subpoena for such and such. Meron na naman silang subpoena powers
Yes,
anytime they can subpoena anyone of a different concern, and this is just one bill that will that acknowledges their subpoena powers. I don't want to revise anything in the subpoena law of these other agencies.
We're not doing that. We're limiting we're delisting the minor crimes, putting in place crimes that would be committed and relevant to the proposed measure concerning subscriber identity module cards. Wala naman pong crimes na, siguro bihira ang mangyayaring crime na sa overspeeding or drunken driving na gagamit ng SIM o
Mr. President, I'm sorry, but
if I may intervene-
all crimes about malicious, fraudulent, or unlawful act, it's already covered.
Yes, so that's what Chair would want to, that it's already included in line 14, malicious, fraudulent, or unlawful act.
I know. The danger of an exhaustive listing is that we might exclude some offenses. Now, I know that there's an anti-privacy law. That's why the repository of information is actually the responsibility of the PTE. What you're saying is that these agencies with subpoena powers might abuse their powers and subpoena something that's not within their mandate. In that case, as I was saying, Mr. President, you can actually go to court and say that this agency has no right to subpoena because it's nothing to do with it. And it's up for the court to decide.
I think, Mr. President, my last retort, Mr. President, it can only happen if we widen the universe of crimes wherein the agencies concerned with subpoena powers can exercise by discretion their powers. But if we narrow the crimes that can be committed, we limit likewise within their turf and corresponding mandate the exercise of their subpoena issuing power. So, hindi na po ma-abuse. Yun lang po yung sinasabi ko. But if that's the pleasure of the sponsor, I think I have made my peace here for purposes of statutory construction na kasi baka meron pa, ang nabilang ko po nag-i-issue ng subpoena, siyam na po dito. Baka meron pa hong iba na hindi ko nabanggit na pwedeng mag-issue ng subpoena. Just to clarify that, Mr. President, I am not against the measure. Gusto ko lang pong itama sangayon doon po sa explanatory note na galing din po sa Senate Bill 99, Mr. President.
Yes, sponsor.
May question ba?
May I know, Mr. President, if my amendment was accepted or not?
I'm sorry to say that I cannot accept the amendment, but thank you for arguing for the sake of clarity.
Yes, but Mr. President, for the record, I still maintain that this is too broad a power to be granted to a subpoena issuing agency. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The Minority Leader is
Thank you.
recognized.
Since our attention was called to paragraph 1 of section 9, I have just a styling amendment, Mr. President. Page 5, line 14. If we can replace the phrase he or she with the words the complainant, so that the ending.
I accept, Mr.
Yes,
President.
okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
So the sponsor accepts. Any objection? There being none. Amendment is
It's good
accepted.
we notice that. So now, Mr. President, on page 5, involving section 10, paragraph A, since it will be an overhaul of paragraph A, so my proposal is that we delete lines 22 to 30 and insert the following. A, period, for failure or refusal to register a SIM. That's the title of the subsection. The following fines shall be imposed upon the PTEs who shall fail or refuse to register a SIM without a valid reason, despite compliance by the end user with the requirements for SIM registration under this Act. Number 1, first offense, a fine not less than 100,000, but 100,000 in words and figures, but not more than 300,000 pesos in words and figures. Second offense, a fine of not less than 300,000, but not more than 500,000 pesos, also in words and figures, semicolon, and number 3, third and subsequent offenses, a fine of not less than 500,000 in words and figures, but not more than 1 million pesos for every offense thereof. I so move, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor have to say?
Accepted.
There no objection. The amendment is accepted.
We just request the Secretariat to look at the styling of the wording, but the essence is there, no, Mr. President. Okay, now on ano tayo? Okay. 6. On page 5, continuing to page 6, I am now referring to section 10, paragraph B. Ano rin to, overhaul din, ano? Since we are overhauling the first part of the said section, my motion is to delete lines 31 to 32 on page 5, and then on page 6, delete lines 1 to 8, so that to replace the entries with B, for breach of confidentiality. The penalty of a fine of not less than 500,000 pesos in words and figures, but not more than 4 million pesos in words and figures, shall be imposed upon PTEs comma, its agents or employees who shall directly or indirectly reveal or disclose any information or data of an end user obtained during the registration requirement under this act, comma, unless otherwise permitted by this act or other laws, period. I so move.
We accept, Mr. President.
There are no objection.
Thank you, Mr.
The amendment is approved.
Line 13. Ang gusto mo rito? Line 13. Okay, Mr. President, on page 6, at line 13, my amendment is to propose a new subsection C, which we shall give the title of C for breach of confidentiality due to negligence. The penalty of a fine of not less than 500,000 peso, 500,000 in words and figures, but not more than 4 million pesos, shall be imposed upon PTEs, its agents or its employees who due to negligence shall reveal or disclose any information or data of an end user obtained during the registration requirement under this act.
We accept, Mr. President.
Are there any objections? There being none, the amendment is accepted.
Okay, just for the information of everyone, we got the range of the penalty from the what law? Data Privacy Act, Mr. President. On page 6, and of course, Mr. President, since we inserted a new section, the relettering of the sections, Mr. President, is also moved. Anong gusto mo? Lines 13 to... Anong gawin ko rito?
On page 6.
Yes.
We're on
Mr.
page 6
President,
already.
on page 6, since we are also proposing the overhaul of the original paragraph C, so allow us to move to delete lines 13 to 16 and then replace it with, tama na tong letter D, no? Okay. Replace this section with the following: D, okay, which is the correct letter for this section. For using fictitious identities or fraudulent identification documents to register a SIM. The penalty of imprisonment ranging from 6 months to 2 years or a fine of not less than 100,000 in words and figures, but not more than 300,000 pesos, or both, shall be imposed upon anyone who uses a fictitious identity or fraudulent identification documents to register a SIM. I so move, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr. President.
Are there any objections? There being none, the amendment is accepted.
25. Ano to? Ginawa mo rito? New. Okay, so I will not pursue my 22nd proposed amendment, Mr. President, because this was already touched upon earlier. So ano na tayo? Ito. Ito na? Saan tayo? On page 7 na ako, Mr. President. I don't know if the sponsor has some page 6 amendments. We can move on, ma'am?
We can, I'll just go back to the other numbers, the other pages that we have.
Sige po. Sige po. Tapusin ko lang po yung On page 7, Mr. President, ito.
Delete lines.
If we can delete lines 3 to 4 so that we can replace the entries with the following: any person who abets or aids in the commission of any of the offenses enumerated in this act shall be held liable as a co-principal.
I accept, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, amendment is accepted.
And then, siguro, Mr. President, ang last amendment na lang, we will revisit the title after everything, after all the amendments have been processed, Mr. President. So, that would be all from this representation as to the sections of the bill. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Sponsor.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Majority Leader?
Yes, the sponsor, Mr. President, may I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace.
Sponsor is again recognized.
On page 4, line 27, after the word information, insert the phrase and A&D data. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, amendment is accepted.
On page 6, delete lines 25 to 29 and replace it with the following. E. For sale of a stolen SIM, the penalty of imprisonment ranging from 6 months to 2 years or a fine of not less than 100,000 pesos but not more than 300,000 pesos or both shall be imposed upon the PTEs, its agents, authorized resellers, or any entity that will engage in the sale of stolen SIM as provided under this Act. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, amendment is accepted.
On page 7, line 3, insert a new subsection which shall read as follows. For sale or transfer of a registered SIM without complying with the required registration, the penalty of imprisonment ranging from 6 months to 6 years or a fine of 100,000 to 300,000 or both shall be imposed upon anyone who sells or transfers a registered SIM without complying with the required registration under this Act. I so move.
Is there an objection? There being none, the amendment is approved.
There are no other individual amendments, Mr. President.
Majority Leader?
Oh, I think the title. The title. Yes.
Want me to ask for...
No.
Let's discuss with the
Yes.
Ask for 1 minute suspension,
1 minute
Mr. President.
suspension.
Session is suspended.
Minority Leader, Mr. President.
Yes, for the title, Mr. President,
The Minority Leader is recognized.
yes, thank you, Mr. President. I move that we amend the title to read as follows. An act mandating the registration of subscriber identity module, open and close parenthesis, SIM in capital letters, for electronic devices, regulating for this purpose its registration and use.
What does the sponsor have to say?
I accept and thank you, Mr. President, to our minority leader for polishing this bill and adding more clarity to it. Thank you also for those that interpolated, Senator Pia, for fixing the style and grammar mostly of the bill. Senator Tol for giving us more headache to think about the possibilities of abuse of subpoena, but it's a reality. But at least if they are diligent enough to look into our records, they know the intent of this law. It's not to abuse subpoena powers, but to help aid law enforcement in capturing those that take advantage of our citizens. So,
Is there any more objection? There being none, the amendment is hereby accepted.
oh, I'm sorry, Senator. Wait. Senator Pia has
Motion
just
yan
some proposed amendments. And these are all subject to style. On page 4, line 25, add the letter S after the word SIM. I accept, Mr. President.
If there no objection, the amendment is accepted.
On page 5, line 11, replace the word off after the word subpoena with the word by. I accept, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, the amendment is approved.
On the same page, line 12, replace the word off after the word investigation with the phrase based on. I accept, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, the amendment is approved.
On page 7, line 5, delete the word for after the word liability and replace it with they, phrase, under or, it shall now, under or. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, the amendment is approved.
And that's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to our good sponsor. Mr. President, this juncture, I move that we close the period of individual amendments. I so move.
Is there an objection? There being none, the period of individual amendment is hereby closed.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1310 under Committee Report number 5, subject to style.
Is there an objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. We congratulate our dear colleague, Senator Grace Poe, and the authors of this measure. Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1310 under Committee Report number 5.
Is there an objection? There being none, the consideration of the measure is suspended.
Move for 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended.
in compliance with Section 8 of Republic Act number 8182, the Official Development Assistance Act of 1996, I move, Mr. President, that we constitute the Oversight Committee of the said measure. May I ask the Senate President on who he would want to designate as members of the said committee?
With the permission of the body, the pursuant to Section 8 of Republic Act 8182, I hereby designate the following senators as members of the Congressional Oversight Committee on the Official Development Assistance Law. Senator Win Gatchalian as chairperson, being the chair of the Senate Committee on Ways and Means. Members, part of the majority, Senator Juan Edgardo Sani Angara, Senator Bong Revilla, Senator Grace Poe, Senator Amy Marcos, Senator J.V. Ejercito, and the part of the minority, Senator Coco Pimentel and Senator Risa Ontiveros. So designated.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, compliance with Section 9 of Republic Act numbers 10708, the Tax Incentives Management and Transparency Act, TIMTA. I move, Mr. President, that we constitute the Joint Oversight Committee of the said measure. May I ask the Senate President on who he would want to designate as members of the said committee?
With the permission of the body, pursuant to Section 9 of Republic Act 10708, I hereby designate the following senators as members of the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Tax Incentives Management and Transparency Act. Senator Win Gatchalian as chairperson, being the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. Members, Senator Mark Villar, being chair of the Senate Committee on Trade and Commerce, and Senator Sani Angara, Senator Nancy Binay, and Senator Coco Pimentel. So designated.
Thank you, Mr. President. In compliance with Section 1700 of Republic Act number 10863, the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act, I move, Mr. President, that we constitute the Oversight Committee of the said measure. May I ask the Senate President on who he would want to designate as members of the said committee?
With the permission of the body, once again, pursuant to Section 1700 of Republic Act 10863, I hereby designate the following senators as members of the Congressional Customs and Tariff Oversight Committee. Senator Win Gatchalian as chairperson of the Ways and Means Committee. Members, Senator Sani Angara, Senator Mark Villar, Senator Francis Tolentino, and Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Mr. President, in compliance with Section 290 of the Republic Act number 8424, the Tax Reform Act of 1997, I move, Mr. President, that we constitute the Oversight Committee of the said measure. May I ask the Senate President on who he would want to designate as members of the said committee?
With the permission of the body, the pursuant to Section 290 of Republic Act 8424, I hereby designate the following senators as members of the Congressional Oversight Committee on Tax Reform. Senator Win Gatchalian as chairperson. Members, Senator Angara, Senator Cayetano, Senator Mark Villar, and Senator Coco Pimentel. So designated.
Thank you, Mr. President. In compliance with Section 10 of Republic Act number 11467, I move, Mr. President, that we constitute the Joint Oversight Committee of the said measure. May I ask the Senate President on who he would want to designate as members of the said committee?
With the permission of the body, once again, pursuant to Section 10 of Republic Act 11467, I hereby designate the following members to be members of the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Illicit Trade on Excisable Products. Senator Win Gatchalian as the chairperson. Members, Sani Angara, Mark Villar, Francis Tolentino, Ronald Bato de la Rosa, Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Coco Pimentel. So designated.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President,
Daming trabaho ni Senator Angara
Suki,
sa
Mr.
lahat
President,
ng
Suki.
Oversight Committee.
Suki, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, September 20, 2022.
Thank you, and we'd like to apologize. I believe Senator Raffy Tulfo wanted to give a speech. I promised him that we'll make it earlier in the afternoon tomorrow.
And we were
And it will
supposed
take
to
up
tackle
the
also the committee report of the Blue
reports.
Ribbon
Blue
and
Ribbon.
the committee report of the Committee on Electoral Reforms. Mr.
Yes.
President.
So let's keep it at that, and
Yes.
so that we can tackle all those measures, including the
Thank you.
barangay elections.
Yes.
Okay, there being no other measures to tackle today, we had moved to adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday, September 20, 2020. Have a good evening, everyone.